Fucking hell.
That's the very first thing that the recording
Are you
gets.
ready? Okay.
Yeah.
This is, because Dan's recording on audio, just FYI, Luke.
Video. We're going on YouTube as well.
Hi, beautiful man.
Hey.
Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Dan, this is your third time on the show, and Luke, this is your second time. Both really popular men with my listeners, especially, I know Dan, I know we had a lot of downloads on both your episodes, so my audience really resonated to both those interviews. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this interview is going to, how it's going to be reached. But I'm feeling really, really positive about it because we have some really controversial, interesting, juicy, spiritual things that we're going to cover today, on all my favorite topics, which I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to have these sort of conversations with people. So before we, kick off, I thought we can do a bit of an intro to those who are not familiar with you and the work that you do. So let's start with Dan. Aka, the spiritual tradie.
Yeah. So I've been in construction for the last 17 years or so. And the last 6 of those, I've been a twice daily meditator. And in the last 2 years, I've recently become a meditation teacher. And yeah, I was living in Brisbane. I was married, got divorced, moved to Melbourne and hung out down there for the last 3 years. And then the end of last year, I just felt the call to shuffle out of Melbourne, and I just packed everything in the car and took off up north and landed in a beautiful spot up near Byron Bay. And so just, very grateful to be up here, living on the water, basically on the beach, at this time, when we're all isolated. It's so nice just to be able to get outside and go for a walk and be in nature and feel the sunshine,
Yeah. And what beautiful timing for you. Perfect divine timing.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah.
Awesome. Luke.
Yeah. So I was in pest control for 20 years. Married, 3 kids, cookie cutter Australian dream, like the whole house, cars, overseas holidays, sort of. The only thing missing was the white picket fence. But in that reality, I was pretty unhappy. And I didn't know why I was unhappy, so I used to drink a lot. And then I shelved alcohol for 12 months and had a spiritual awakening in 2015. And now, fast forward to here, I'm a practicing astrologer, a Reiki healer, I'm divorced, and I've moved from the Gold Coast to Melbourne so I could co-parent my kids. And yeah, I'm a bit of a truth seeker, bit of an antagonist, and just on my path, Yeah.
And the reason why I got you both on the show today, because this is my first duo, as men duo, because I have actually had Luke and Heidi, his beautiful divine counterpart, on the show a few months ago, and that was so well received. And it's so nice to have my first men duo on the show. And the reason why I brought you on the show is I love how you are both keeping it freaking real. You, as you mentioned, Luke, you are a truth seeker. You speak your truth. You push the boundaries on a few things, ruffling a few feathers out there, which I totally love. And Dan, you're keeping it real too. You're keeping it very light and fluffy, not too, especially in the spiritual space, where there is a lot of spiritual bypass, I feel, at the moment. And, you're someone that just, happy just to, again, push the boundaries slightly, keeping it light, entertaining. You definitely entertain me with all your stories and your videos. I have a really great laugh. So for that, I'm truly grateful and really appreciate and respect the work and the messages that you're getting out there in the community, especially in this particular time that we find ourselves living in.
I still like to have fun with you know, with spirituality, and just make sure that we're being aware if we're taking ourselves too seriously with it, you know, and trying to put on a facade of looking spiritual instead of being spiritual, which to me means to be nice to everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're definitely that. So today we're going to cover a few different topics, I suppose. I mean, allowing this just to flow as it goes. But as we discussed earlier, today the conversation is around, you know, how the fuck can you get out of your way? You know, how to get out of your way when you are feeling really stuck, when you're feeling really discouraged in life, and perhaps just need a bit of encouragement or support in being able to walk your path or follow your purpose in life, whether you have a few different purposes or being in your dharma. And you're both great examples of men who have really conquered a lot of fear to follow this path that you're working on, following this path of being of service to those who resonate to you or come across the work that you do. So that's what I really wanted to cover today is, you know, how do we step into our truth when there's so much resistance? And it might be your own resistance internally or the resistance of other humans or the environment that we find ourselves living in. There's a lot of fear. So how do you stay courageous? You know, and we'll start with you again, Dan, and perhaps, you know, talking about how you conquered a lot of fears as a tradie to step into your spiritual path.
Yeah. So first and foremost, obviously for me, is having my daily practice. That really gives me what I feel something to anchor into, because, you know, the condition of the body and the mind can be so turbulent. Just trying to work things out on the thinking level, it can be very kind of taxing or very stressful, trying to work out what am I supposed to do, what am I here for. And so for me, coming back to that daily practice and having that inner anchor, you know, constantly developing that inner anchor has been my lifeline. But as far as, and even with Dharma, like you said, our purpose, for me, it's a constant learning of, it's not just one job or one outcome in the future that we're trying to, if I know what my one thing is, then I'll be happy or fulfilled. It's knowing in each moment what I need to do and how I can serve. And, you know, maybe I don't have the skills or the capability to serve here, and I could develop that. And so knowing that, and more about knowing or connecting to what's important in each moment rather than having a long-term goal of what the one thing or the one outcome needs to be, is what I'm coming around to more and more. Is attaching that, like, you need to have goals, but the goals need to be flexible enough to withstand change as well. And so for me, it's not about one outcome or one dharma. It's about how to tap into, come back to the moment, what's needed right now, and that could change tomorrow. And then I need to be adaptable to you know, adapt to the new challenges that we face.
Yeah, they're really great points too, because I think most of us can relate to that, and, you know, putting that expectation or pressure on yourself to be a certain way or behave a certain way and show up in a certain manner. And, you know, I'm referring to myself in many ways too. And I think I look back to my early years of being really hard on myself, being quite regimented in my spiritual practice. And once I was able just to take that hat off for a moment and see the bigger picture and remove those constraints, I feel like they were like, how do I say it? The like straps around my body. Once I was able to let that go, I was able to feel into a lot more freedom in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did it start for you though, out of curiosity? I mean, how did you know that meditation was going to be a big part of your life?
I guess because I feel like from where I was before meditation, I was so in the dark about all of life. And so once I stuck to the practice and it started to reveal a lot of stuff that I was so unaware of, and then I started to look around and notice there's a whole society full of people that were just like me, or that I'm just like them. then I'm like, well, if I was suffering through this, I'm sure they're all suffering as well, even if they're not entirely aware of how badly they're suffering, as I wasn't aware of how badly I was suffering until I got out of it. It's looking back, it's like, wow, that was hell. But while you're in it, you kind of make do, and you struggle through it. So once I discovered this tool, and I was like, all right, this is something that's changed my life and has the potential for everybody to, because it's something that everyone can do. I'd love to teach and love to share that that knowledge with other people as well. So for me, I question it. I've questioned it over my path, and I've tried other things, and I'm like, but always comes back to me is what's the most important thing that people need, and it's always more awareness, more self-awareness, because if you give someone money, or you give someone a house, or you give someone any of the material needs that they need to survive, that's great. But if they have their own awareness of how they're holding themselves back, then they're only going to flourish from that. And so it's self-empowerment is the key. Give someone the tools that I was given to empower themselves. Yeah.
That's so beautifully said. Thank you. What was some of your resistance?
To what exactly?
To committing yourself and dedicating yourself to meditation and the spiritual practice.
I was resistant at the beginning. I was very resistant because just of stress in the body, and that's the main reason why anyone's resistant, I guess, is because there's an amount of stress and fatigue in the body that's telling us we need to be doing and avoiding, and sometimes when we find something that's good for us, we can not use it because the stress is telling us otherwise. And so that was my resistance. But I realized that early on, and I made a decision that I was going to dedicate myself long term. So I made a 5-year commitment to meditation, which sounds ridiculous, but I really was like reading a lot of like reports on people that meditated and spirituality and astral travel and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to know what they're talking about, but it doesn't seem to happen unless you dedicate yourself to a practice. And so it got to a point where the curiosity grew too much, and I was like, right, I'm just going to do it until I find out what they're talking about. And the thing is that the way my life unfolded after that was nothing like what I thought was going to happen. But it's been a beautiful ride nonetheless.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so cool. Thank you for that share. Luke, yes, as you mentioned, you're a married man, had children, living in Queensland, going out drinking lots of beer. Yeah. What was a pivotal moment for you?
I guess I was seeking fulfillment, and I was seeking fulfillment in things. So for whatever reason, my journey pre-awakening was just about doing what I thought you were supposed to do in the world, like go after, get money, settle down, find someone, these types of things. So I was like going through my life almost with like a mental checklist, and sort of going and like, and then every time I would achieve something or get something or have something, I was just like, oh, now what? Now what's the next thing? And totally externalizing fulfillment for me, which led me to a place where I like to look at it as a collection of these things that I achieved within life, a successful business, house, cars, kids, wife, all of those things, and got to that place where I was just like, why am I why am I unhappy here? And initially, I wasn't aware of the reason for that. So like most men do, they're really good at avoiding feeling things and hiding from things. So I used alcohol as a tool to try and numb that sort of inner sense of like unfulfillment, if you like. Because after a couple of drinks, then it would just be, everything would become numb, and that feeling of like, why aren't I happy, would just sort of dissolve away. So the catalyst or the turning point for me was just one too many stupid fucking things, drunk pretty much. And then, the next day being told things by family and wife and stuff that I'd either done or said, and having no memory of that, and just be like, fuck. And it was just one stupid thing after the next over a period of, you know, maybe about 12 or 18 months, and led me to this place that at the end of 2014, I think we went to a friend's wedding, and before the speeches, I was passed out drunk in the garden. And apparently when they tried to wake me up, like I was quite aggressive, and I was like, "This is a fucking wedding, and take me home," and was really not my high point. And the next day, when my wife was telling me about what had happened, like I just felt shame and guilt and just like shit. And that was the point where I just was like, I can't continue going on like this. This is fuck. Something's going on at a deeper level, and I don't know what that is, but alcohol's making it worse. So I made the commitment at the end of 2014 to stop drinking for 12 months, for a whole 12 months. And initially I faced a lot of backlash from my family and my wife and friends and things, because they're like, you don't have a problem, because I was really good at like masking how much I'd had to drink and stuff. And I said, and they were like sort of saying things like, why don't you just do a month off? You know, why don't you do a month off to start? I'm like, no, I need to actually learn to live for a year at least without it in my life, to know what it's like, and to try and get to the bottom of what was going on. And so 2015 was my year off alcohol. And at the beginning of that year, a friend had sent me a conspiracy video on 9/11. And that was just like a bit of a catalyst and a tipping point, which sent me down a rabbit hole, which got me to the place of looking into everything. I just questioned reality completely, and it got to the whole spiritual side of things, and astrology, and you name it, and meditation, things like that. Started doing Reiki, and started doing my own meditation practice, and yeah, just awoken to that sort of life. So for me, it wasn't like I sort of learned about meditation and like Dan's path, and then started implementing like a daily practice. I actually had like I don't know, that came later, but I had a dark night of the soul after I'd started this spiritual path. It's like, but yeah, it just got me onto that place where I knew I could live without alcohol. I got to the reasons why I was unhappy, because I was seeking external fulfillment in my life, and I was never going to find that in another person, or in a bank account, or in a job, or anything like that. It was only going to ever come from within. And that just sort of solidified my path onto this trajectory that I'm on now. And then it was through that process, the type of things that can unravel in your life pre-awakening, as you start to awaken and move to more of a spiritual life, those things start to unravel. And that can be quite difficult to go through. However, like Dan said, it was the routine meditative type practices and the spiritual guidance and things like that, and the books and all of that, that helped me transition through that process of like unraveling all of that pre-awakening life. Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing share. And I think a lot of people listening to this interview will be able to relate to that. How many people out there are living in this sort of life of feeling really unfulfilled, or feeling stuck, and knowing that this isn't where they want to be, but they don't know how to move forward, or they don't know the steps to take to get them out of this situation that they're in, especially if you're unhappy in a relationship, or you've got responsibilities, i.e., you know, career and children like yourself. You know, it's really challenging. It's really testing to actually it takes a very courageous person to admit that they actually are unhappy in this situation, this life that they're in. And okay, what are we going to do about it? It's really tough.
Yeah, it's the toughest thing that I've had to go through, without a doubt. However, it's worth it. Like, you're worth it. You're worth that seeking, you know, that self-actualization and that inner fulfillment. It's worth whatever pain and heartache and, you know, transition you've got to go through. It's definitely 100% worth it. For me personally, I'd encourage others, you know, with that same sort of with that same tip. The one thing that I would recommend is that, especially for blokes, is they put their hand up and they ask, and like they speak out and they ask for help. Because like I was fortunate, halfway through my sort of transition, I had a mentor, which was really pivotal in me staying grounded through that process. And what, like Dan was saying before, you find that there's a lot of people that have walked these paths before you, that have gone through these types of transitions and come out the other side. And it's not to say you can follow them, but they can be like little guideposts along the way that can help sort of, give you some tips and hints and, and just encouragement and reassurance that you're on the right path and you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. I think it's really important that we do find ourselves a bit of a mentor or a community that can help you through that transition. So important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the fears that men have, because I think there's still a lot of stigma attached to, being able to be in your full expression as a man. And when I say that, I'm talking about, allowing themselves to be in their full vulnerability as a man. There's some shame attached to that. And, especially Australian men, they're very self-sufficient, I'm generalizing here, but they're not one to really talk about their feelings. And I'm not just saying Australian men, a lot of men out there worldwide, there's they hold back from really talking about emotions. Like us females, we're quite happy to talk about our emotions. So I'd love to hear your perspective or your opinion and take about, some of the fears that you feel that men have. Dan,
yeah,
Luke, sorry, you follow on. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, not being good enough was a big one for me. Just I wasn't good enough, and when you're in a place when the external world is viewing you as being successful because you're ticking the boxes of that Australian sort of cookie cutter lifestyle, but yet you're in it and you're not fulfilled or happy. That's like, what, there's something wrong with you. So not being good enough for me was like a big one that I had to sort of overcome. And when pre sort of awakening life as well, you sort of see vulnerability as a weakness, as something that you should try and mask or hide, and with bravado type, expression. What I've discovered is that like vulnerability is a superpower. Especially for men to be able to express their vulnerability becomes a really core strength, because in doing so, you allow others to be able to do the same, and there's so many people that I've sort of, helped with their charts or done healings with and things like that, just little things where you can express a little bit of your own vulnerability. It's like you're showing them it's okay, like it's okay to be that way, because our society is very built on the whole macho sort of man type, especially in Australia, this great Australian man, to be tough. And, when we were younger, it's like, don't be a girl, don't cry, man up, toughen up, those types of things that we learn. But yet all that does is that represses that stuff, and it doesn't allow that flow of, that's part of where equally, when we're strong and courageous, equally when we're weak and we're vulnerable, that's still a part of our character, and we need to be able to freely express that in times when it's natural and normal to do so, and not to feel like that we can't. So yeah, to round that off, it was like, definitely that I wasn't good enough was a fear that I had to overcome. And then being able to be vulnerable in situations. And now, like, I cry a lot. It doesn't take much for me to cry. I'll cry when I'm upset, but I'll cry when there's a nice movie that you're watching as well. And it's like, you allow that because it's like, that to be able to be free to express those emotions as they arise in you is like, it's liberating. You feel like you can just cry when you need to cry instead of having to like fight that and be strong and tough and conceal it. It's like, that's actually a really powerful thing to do, because it's like you're alive. You can experience all of the emotions that arise through you, and not necessarily, that is not indicative of the type of person that you are either. It's just like, in this moment calls for strong emotions and I'm going to express them.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And I I really feel that in you, Luke, the sense of you're quite embodied in your masculine and your feminine energies, which I really love. That you are obviously a very sensitive soul, but you're very strong and grounded and solid. You really feel that, and I so love that.
Thank you.
Mm. Dan.
So we're talking about the fears, right?
Yes, yeah.
I guess for me, growing up, I was quite open and quite exposed. I'd cry a lot as a young child, and if I was ever picked on or whatever, I couldn't handle it. I just cry, and then that would get you more picked on. So I think around just before the start of high school, I met my best mate who helped me train to not be emotional anymore, and helped me to really put that wall up. To be good at lying, to be good at lying to others, but also lying to myself. And I really developed a coping mechanism because I lived at Western Sydney, so it's quite a harsh environment. Kids project what they're experiencing onto the people they interact with, and so if everyone's not having a great time at home, and then we're all sharing that on each other in the playground, you can imagine it's quite a hostile environment for someone who's open-hearted and innocent at a young age. So I learned, I was taught how to disconnect from that, and how to, live on the surface and not feel into that, because it was dangerous to expose that vulnerability in the school, in the playground, or in the classroom. And so one of my coping mechanisms obviously was humor. It was I could make people laugh, and I'd get out of trouble. I could escape by, getting a laugh and get away with it. But it's not, obviously I became quite aware that it's not sustainable to not feel into what you're experiencing, and just putting on a facade of like, oh, everything's great, like Luke said on the work site, harden up, mate. If you have emotions, or you're, whatever, then you're kind of weak. And so even if it's not outside influence that's making you do it, you just have this kind of conditioned armor that you've carried through school, and then through, being an apprentice and all that kind of stuff. And just noticing how that's holding me back, how it's keeping me from interacting with other people, keeping a small-minded view of the world of like, that person's a threat to me, so I'm going to defend myself because I can't be vulnerable because they're going to hurt me, when there's no actual threat there. And it's just a conditioning, carried over from the past. So I think it's just a constant unfolding of like coming to these barriers and within myself, reconciling that I'm not in actual danger. In most cases, it's finding compassion. If someone else is treating you poorly, you find compassion for them because you realize they've been through some crap as well. And, they're just projecting their pain onto you, and you can sort of, not take that on board, and give them a bit of compassion through that. So that's the kind of shift as well that comes with it. If you start to realize that everyone's, if they're, projecting nastiness onto you, that's because they've been through something that hurt them. So yeah, it's a constant work in progress of like how to be more vulnerable, how to know when to be vulnerable, and how to know when to not, because it's not always appropriate to be vulnerable at all times. Like, for example, if you're teaching, you're there to hold space. But yeah, just knowing what to do, and working, treating it like a work in progress. I think we lost Sharon again.
I think we might have lost Sharon.
All right, here we go.
Oh, put it on, man.
All right, time to be vulnerable now.
Alrighty. Should we pick up where we left off then?
Yes, right. What were we talking about? 5G, the Food Safe app, which is a brilliant idea, by the way. You should sell that.
I mean, like, seriously.
How many people die every year from heart disease in this country?
17,533 in 2008.
But the government doesn't step in to stop that.
Let's get another app, right, that you can be developed that lets you know when you're within 1.5 meters of a dangerous driver that's been convicted of, either booze drinking or dangerous driving, or has had an accident. Like, let's go to the next level, right? If you want to keep really safe,
Yeah.
So then we could be like, oh my God, I got to pull over right now because here comes a dangerous driver.
Yeah. Or here comes someone that shoplifted when they were 15.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Here comes someone that lied to their mother when they were 5 years old.
Yeah.
No? Where do we stop?
We're all fucked.
Where do we stop? You know?
When they convince you that your fellow man, you need to fear them to the level that we are now, and you have to isolate yourself from them, like it's a slippery little slope. Definitely.
Very slippery.
Yeah. Because the truth of the matter is we're all fucking one.
Yeah.
So that's like looking at part of your body and going, oh fuck. Oh, my arm, and then your arm's like, the arm's gonna kill me. Like fucking, I mean,
yeah.
It's ludicrous. You know?
That's right. And do you know who's behind the government? Who's got that data? Who's going to collect it? Or we're going to let the government collect it?
So the government are going to store it with Amazon.
With Amazon.
This isn't conspiracy. This is on their website.
This is too good to be true.
Jeff Bezos, the Amazon dude,
the richest man in the world. They
found that his cloud service is the most secure.
Oh, of course.
I'm pretty sure he was on Epstein's flight log. Just saying. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But anyway, so they're going to store it on Amazon, and the only people that are allowed access to that are health officials, right? Because they've got our interests at heart. And they're not going to give that to Centrelink, and they're not going to give it to the police, and they're not going to give it to the courts, and the government's not going to use it in any other way. And after 21 days, they're going to delete it. But I guess it pulls into the question of how much can you trust the government? Like I was saying the other day, initially when they bring these things in, they bring them into all these safeguards. Yeah. And they bring it with this illusion of like, oh, it's safe and it's okay for everyone. But at what point do they just sort of erode those a little bit and a little bit more control or a little bit more sharing of that data? Yeah. And to the point that, you know, like you were saying, you come down the track and they're like saying, oh, you need the job seeker payment. You haven't downloaded the app. And on the app here, it says you haven't had your vaccine either. Well, you know, we're going to stop the payment now until you can do that. We'll give it back to you as soon as you get on board here.
And we notice that you've been driving around when you're supposed to be in isolation, and there's a fine that's attached to that as well. And where, you know, and then you interacted with this person who's this and this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I saw a thing the other day. I think it's fake, but it raises a good point. And it was like, the app comes up and it says, oh, you're more than 50 kilometers from your home. Please call in now to register your travel. As to say, like, what's your reason for being 50 Ks or more away from your home? Yeah. And this type of tracking of a society never ends well. You have to just go back to the last World War that there was. Yeah. And ask the Jewish people how that turned out for them.
That's right. It's dangerous because they implement it for a virus, and then next thing you know, it's a terrorist group or something, and so we're tracking those people. We're just going to use it to save you from the bad guys. And so we've got to track the whole population so we can know where the terrorists are. And then that's right. And then you come in with some more fear, and it's these people who are sneaking in from overseas. Let's say in the case of America or something, you know, the illegal people. And so then we can, but then they're the bad guys. Yeah. And it just snowballs into this weird control, super, too much surveillance. Yeah. And people, and the worst part is it's not the people that are in power that put it there. It's the people that inherit that power with the wrong intentions that are like, oh, look at all this surveillance that we have. How good is this? You know, you don't want Donald Trump, even, you don't want his government when he decides that I don't want to leave when I'm voted out to have all that power put in place, you know?
That's right, because the pathway we're heading towards is artificial intelligence. So what happens when artificial intelligence gets a hold of this type of power over, you know, living flesh and soul people? Yeah. And all of a sudden it knows better than we do. Yeah. And then you're heading down the path of Terminator movies or the Dredge movies or any of those sci-fi movies that are sort of programming us with for the last 20 years. Yeah. And you're like, all of a sudden that's the reality. And it's like that. We're at this.
Do you know what's interesting though? You heard of neural net before?
Yeah, briefly. Yeah.
Elon Musk's brain chip.
Yes. Yeah.
Like everyone's blowing up, like no vaccinations. We're not going to get microchipped Bill Gates go away 100%. If Elon Musk brings out a brain chip that makes you smarter, there'll be lines around the block for that thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
if you go back to the ancient Lemurian race, they didn't have language. They used sound to communicate, but they were very like extra sensory perception. You know what I mean? ESP type, the ability to read minds, and all that sort of thing. So we with the right type of training, I think we can get there, but we don't need it artificially implemented to get there. You know what I mean? Because then who controls that artificial? Anyway, we'll leave it there. We'll come back. We're going to float back down now.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm back.
Sharon.
So sorry, I'm back. So I had to record it again.
We can hear you.
Re-record again.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
Oh, you can hear me? We can't see me?
I got you back.
Yeah.
You're back.
You're good.
It says my internet's unstable. I'll just have to record it again. It says my internet's unstable. So Dan was on a really good rant. You want a really good talk about, and I missed the end of it. Sorry.
I think I was just basically saying that it's a constant refinement of, leaning into the vulnerability and realizing that I'm being defensive, and then letting go and feeling the pain that's obviously behind it. And, it's this constant unfolding. It's not like a destination where it's like, oh yes, all the vulnerabilities being done and I'm free. It's just like constantly moving into things that either make you afraid or make you feel vulnerable, and just like opening up to it, and there's probably places that I'm so blind to that I'm hiding from, and that I'm not doing the work on, but eventually those things will be brought to my awareness, I'm sure. So yeah, it's just a constant unfolding. So, and a curiosity with it as well. And it's something that, even something like hugging other men, because it was Western Sydney, it was like, bro, handshake, you don't hug, you don't touch, it's very like guarded, yeah, mate, yeah, like that, So, even learning that that's okay, it's not gay, to, give another bloke a hug and to enjoy it, right? And to feel the connection and to enjoy that. I grew up as well without my father being there, so I didn't have that kind of masculine role model in my life as well. So it's kind of learning that as well on this process, all since I've been 30, like growing up again, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so beautiful. And I feel that with a lot of men out there is that holdback of being able to express themselves in that manner of their softness, their vulnerability, and I call it that feminine side of them. And it's so lovely to see both you men being able to embody that and appreciate it a lot more for what it is. Yeah.
And one of the other things that Luke said before, and it's so important that he mentioned it, that having a mentor or having teachers, having as many teachers as you can, people that you aspire to, or that hold space for communities that you can get around. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's like a lot of the time we want to see change in the world, but we got to come back to, can we change ourselves first and get our shit together? And then can we start to implement change in our immediate vicinity, our communities, and let that move on out into the world? But a lot of the times the first point of call is to find a community, or to move into a space and just not make any changes, just be in the community and share with that community. And that's a starting point, as opposed to being separate and isolated and I don't belong to any community, or, that there's so many different clubs and groups and things like that out there. Just following that curiosity for what you want to learn, and the people that you resonate with, and go and hang out with them and interact, and that'll make you grow. And from there, that cascades. But yeah, having a teacher or multiple teachers and multiple mentors is so important. Otherwise, we're just kind of floating around,
Yeah, that's such a great point. Thank you. Luke, let's talk about, some of the work that you do around astrology and how that can really help support someone that is going through this transition of awakening, or just wanting to understand a bit about their character, their nature, because I know there's a lot more, not so much support, but people have been a lot more, there's a bit of a movement around astrology now, I'm finding. And I don't know if it's because people are stuck at home and diving into, being a bit more curious around astrology. And I know you're incredibly active and very vocal about this work on social media, which I absolutely love. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, for me, it was the typical aversion towards astrology. I'm a Virgo, so I'd identified with some of the traits that were very stereotypical of Virgo, being very critical and a bit of a perfectionist, and I don't like feet. But pre-awakening, I was just like, oh yeah, whatever. And you get that little tiny little part in the newspaper or the magazine, and that's your horoscope. And some days you read it and you go, yeah, that's me. And the other days you read it, what the fuck's this talking about? So it's really easy to just sort of shuck it all out and go, there's nothing to that. Plus, we get a lot of ridicule through popular culture, mainstream. They feed it in through television and movies, and that they ridicule off the weird wacko astrologer or the people that are ultra spiritual and things like that. However, part of my awakening process was just looking into things. Like I had just this voracious sort of appetite for knowledge. I wanted to know. And then when I found out more, I was like, what fuck? And, just peeling back layers of just, deceit, really. And I found a guy online that was talking about astrotheology. So he was tying astrology and religions together and showing how religions and through their mythology are telling the story of the movement of the stars, and they've been doing this pre-Christian times. Like you go back, Babylonian, Sumerian, they've been telling the similar stories in the religious mythologies, and underpinning it all was they're just telling the movement of the stars. And I found that right. Just like, what? So there must be something to astrology. Rather than looking into religion, I started looking into astrology, and I discovered that I have a birth chart. So I'm a Virgo, but in your birth chart, you have a sign, you have a Mercury sign, a Venus sign, you have all of the zodiac expressing in your birth chart and other key points. And when you take the whole picture, because we're whole beings, into rather than just the sun aspect of it, which would be the horoscope, you start to get a really specific, detailed sort of look into someone's characters, their psyche, their sort of energetic makeup, if you like. And that just, for me, back when I had this awakening, that was enough. I was hook, line, and sinker, and I couldn't find out enough about it. I just wanted to know more and more and more. I sought a tutor, and then I started just, pulling off videos off YouTube and books off the internet, and just like learning as much as I could until I got to the point where I could confidently and comfortably read and interpret other people's charts. But astrology is a fantastic tool. It's not for everyone. Some people aren't going to resonate with it, and they're going to be a little bit like they're going to have some prejudice against it or whatever. That's cool. And it's not the tool out there saying, hey, this is the Holy Grail, and if you don't know your birth sign and your rising sign and your moon sign, then you're not into like spirituality. It's not like that either. It's just a really cool tool that you can use. And for me, what I find it is a tool of self-awareness. So let's say you are going through some difficult times and you're trying to make sense of things and you can't. And an astrologer can come in and go, and look at what's happening at this moment in time that you're passing through, and bring understanding from the freaking stars above. And what we call those are the gods above us, right? And that God, that the wisdom of those gods can come through your own specific, unique birth chart that's yours, because it was created the moment you took your first breath in this vessel that you call your body. Like, it's a really powerful tool that's very specific, and it can give beautiful guidance. It's like your own personal mentor through the energetic journey of life. And when everything's going swell in your life and you're like kicking goals, and it's just like you're just beaming positivity, and you're just going through the dark and the good and everything, and you're like, yeah, man, I've got this. You're probably not going to be like, geez, I really wonder what my astrology is doing today and how that's going to cope. But when shit isn't going well and you're trying to make sense, or you're a bit fucking confused, or you're going through a really difficult time and you don't know why, what the lesson is, or even if there is one, astrology is a really beautiful tool to go, hey, let's give a perspective from the gods above. So yeah, that stuff, when I get into that sort of level of it, and that's the work that I do with the clients that I see, is just that being that guide. And it's sort of like, you know, I step back from taking any sort of credit for that, because it's like, and I constantly say this to people, it's like, it's your chart. It's not me. It's not me. I'm just, astrology is a language, right? And all I've done is I've learned to decode that language. And then I can bring you my perspective on what that language is saying for your life. And it's a really cool tool and a powerful tool. So, but again, like I said at the beginning, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's such an intelligent tool, though.
Yeah, if you think about the skies above, like there's hardly a patch of earth that hasn't been touched by that or altered by the hand of man in some particular way. You know, like we're destroying rainforests and the Amazon, like you would believe, and we're polluting the waterways and the oceans and things like that. Like we make a really good job of fucking this earth up, this poor Mother Earth that we sort of co-inhabit with. Yeah, if you were to look to the heavens above, our ancestors, thousands, like 10,000 years ago, looked at exactly the same sky. That sky hasn't changed, even though it's constantly in motion. It's the same pattern above you. It's just expressing in different ways because of the timeline we're passing through. And just that, like you go outside of the city where there's no light pollution at night and just look up in awe and wonder, and just know that 15, 20,000 years ago, your ancestors stood on this earth and looked up at exactly the same sky. And, you know, like there's a little line in the Lion King movie where Simba's been fucking up his little shit, and he goes, like, the dad's going to reprimand him, pulls him up onto the mountain at night. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, you know, whenever you need guidance, just look to the stars above, and the kings above are always waiting to guide you. And it's just,
I remember that.
It's beautiful. Paraphrasing the shit out of that because I can't remember, but anyway.
That's okay. Just like I think we were speaking the other day, how the world is flat, it's not round.
Looks flat to me. Where is it, Dan? Where is it? Where's the tin foil, Dan? Okay. There we go. Yeah. You know what? The guy that inspired me to look deeply into astrology, he's a flat earther. But he's also an astrologer, an astrotheologist, a very brilliant mind, speaks about 6 languages, an Australian guy, well respected in the truth community. And, you know, I don't necessarily tend to heavily identify with flat all round. However, if you were to ask me and put me on the spot, I would definitely lean more towards that it's a flat plane that we live on within a sphere and not on top of a sphere. But that's my personal views, and I'm not going to push them on anyone.
Yeah. I know you won't. Dan, what was my question?
No sound.
I've got him off. I've got him on mute. Let's put him off mute.
Yes.
There we go. Better. You're on mute.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
Yes. What's the question?
I can't remember. What was the question?
Oh, you're asking me about astrology.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Now, Dan, so let's talk about meditation, because I know you are running a meditation course at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the only thing you're doing? Are you involved in any other kind of spiritual offerings?
Not really, no. I teach yoga a little bit, but I do that mostly one-on-one. But the main thing's teaching meditation and holding community. So I run the 3-day Learn to Meditate course, where I teach the being technique. And basically the best way to describe it is, before meditation, I was living life all in my head, like Luke was saying, checking the boxes of what the outside world told me that I needed to do in order to be successful or to be fulfilled, or whatever the situation was. And from my experience, on a deeper level, beyond thinking, there's this an intelligence of being, our own being, of what we are. And within that holds all the impulses of nature, holds all of the instructions for how we complete our dharma, how we be of service in each moment. So it's not determined by the outside, it's determined all self-referral. And so the technique I teach is how to experience this place of self-referral on a daily basis. So we're establishing it as a place of reference, because obviously we've been trained and conditioned to seek outside guidance and approval of what we are and how we're supposed to behave for so long. It takes some time to retune to that inner knowing, that inner space. And so the 3-day course will teach you how to have the experience of being, and how to predictably and replicate that experience every day. And then I also hold weekly group meditations that you can come, stay in the community. We can talk about your experiences with the eyes closed, or how that connecting to being is changing the way you experience your eyes open, and just support people to grow and continue on doing that, because it's so important that we're self-referring and connecting to the place within us that doesn't change. That's always the same. That part of ourself that's just there through all the changes that we've been through. We've been through so much evolution in our life, but there's still that part of us that feels like me. And establishing our awareness out of the thinking, stressed mind back into the body. And this process causes the body to release stress and fatigue and start to recover from the build up of stress that we've accumulated through our life. And so that's where my attention and focus is right now. And so I'm just doing that on Zoom as much as possible.
Awesome. And I'm so excited to be joining you on your 3-day Learn to Meditate. I think it kicks off tonight, which I'm super excited about.
Yes.
And I'll put everything in the show notes as well. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of listeners who are going to want to connect with you both. So I'll put all your details in the show notes. And I cannot, I cannot recommend more highly anyone that wants to work with you both to reach out, because you're an amazing man. You're doing so much in the community, and I have so much respect for you both. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to talk about or touch on that I haven't covered?
How long have you got?
Oh, Dan, I love you.
Luke, what do you got?
Come on, what do you got for me?
Look, a question I get asked a lot at the moment is like, when's this going to end? And probably a better question is, when's it going to begin? Because what is ending is a cycle is ending, a way of being is ending. And the process this ending is a lot of the repressed and hidden ways in which any type of authoritarian system has had authority or control over you is now coming to light, as we purge that into the collective and we transition away and out of it. So this is a process, and we have to allow that process to unfold. And it's don't wish it to be over. It's we've got to get through this and allow it to take its course. I see that between September, October, November this year is probably going to be quite a challenging period of time. We're going to move through astrological because we have a really malefic type aspect in the skies. You have the god of war in a square 3 or 4 times to the bloody the king of gods, Jupiter, as well as Satan or Saturn, and Pluto, which is this transformation through crisis. So normally you would have Mars transition through a sign within about 6 or 8 weeks, and Mars is going to hang out in one sign for 6 months because of its retrograde cycle this year. So we're going to go through some pretty challenging times. We also got a nodal shift happening in about a week's time. So the south and north node of the moon take about 18 months to go through each of the signs, and they retrograde backwards through them. They're the only moving bodies that continually their retrograde path through the sky. So they've been in Capricorn South Node and Cancer North Node, and we've been dealing with Capricorn, which would be like the patriarchal systems, authority, letting go of control on the outside world, and then the North Node was in Cancer, which is like nurturing and sustaining ourselves from within and not so much from without anymore. That shift is going to happen collectively for us, where we're going to have a north node in Gemini and a south node in Sagittarius. And these signs deal with like beliefs, information and knowledge and that sort of thing. So collectively, as this transition happens for us, we're going to have to be, really letting go of our dogmatic, stuck in our ways, belief systems that are old and antiquated, or hanging on to truth as if it's like my truth and defending it, even when the Gemini element, which is new information, comes to light and new perspectives. The north node is like the destiny where we're moving towards, and the south node is what we're letting go of or overcoming. And being a Gemini north node, we have to get into that space collectively where we can hold different forms of information, opinions and perspectives as we transition this process that we're underway. The answer isn't going to be hanging on to knowledge and truth and like, this is what it is. It's like, can you let go of what you think you know when new information comes to light? And the more you're able to do that and have that Gemini fun of like stimulation and just playfulness with that, instead of really being attached to one perspective or another, or one dogmatic, religious view or anything like that. It's like, if you can let go and detach a little bit, you're going to find that transition process like awakening, because there's going to be a lot of knowledge and information that's coming into the collective, and stuff that was really dark and hidden is probably going to come to light. So if you're able to allow that process and have a bit of fun with it, have a bit of fun with it, you're going to find that transition a lot easier. So yeah, I mean, I could crap on. How long you got? But yeah, so and then we have a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on the solstice in December this year, and that's a really key turning point, which I think will start to be the beginning of the new once we get there. There will still be transition and things coming undone, but I think between now and the end of the year, we're still in this process. And we've got a lot of retrogrades happening now, and in the next couple of weeks, a lot of the big guys are retrograding, so it's just like more of the same.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And I'd only add to that. What Luke was saying. There's a lot of transition going on, and to just be curious about what the new looks like, because no one knows. We don't know. We can speculate and talk about all these different things, but the beauty of it is that it's the new coming through, and we'll look back on this time in 2 or 3 years and be like, oh, I remember that, and we'll look back. But if we can have that perspective now, this is going to be okay. It's going to be a drastic change to the status quo. But if we're looking at it from a curious perspective and not a defensive one, we're going to be able to see the opportunities to grow through this period instead of being in scarcity, in defensive survival mode. We want to be looking to flourish during this time, even though it looks like a crisis. It's actually a call to action to come together and work together to build the new through this period. So exactly like Luke was saying, it's a big transition coming up, but having a positive or an evolutionary view at it, that it's good. If we all work together through, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Just embrace the new with opportunity, and be willing to let go of the old as well. Definitely makes that process a lot easier, and seeing that what is happening as an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys. So awesome to have you both on the show. I can't wait to release this, and and I'll get it out on video as well.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.